Your silence turned their confidence into fear, Stoicism. Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in the room is often the most insecure? While they're desperately trying to fill every silence with words, there's someone else sitting quietly, observing, thinking, and making everyone else increasingly uncomfortable with their presence alone. Today, I'm going to show you how the ancient Stoics discovered something that modern psychology has only recently confirmed. Silence isn't just golden, it's a weapon. And when wielded correctly, your silence can transform from a sign of weakness into their greatest fear. What if I told you that Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, conquered more minds through strategic silence than he ever did with armies? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your silence makes others so uncomfortable, and how to use this ancient wisdom to command respect in every room you enter. Let me start with a story that happened just last week. A friend of mine, let's call him David, was in a heated meeting at his company. His colleagues were arguing, pointing fingers, raising their voices. Everyone was talking over each other, desperate to be heard. David said nothing. For 20 minutes, he just listened, observed, and took notes. The louder his colleagues got, the more uncomfortable they became with his silence. Finally, one of them snapped, "David, what's your opinion?" "You haven't said anything!" When David finally spoke, his words carried more weight than all their combined shouting. He calmly presented his analysis, and the room fell silent. His promotion came the following month. This isn't coincidence. This is ancient Stoic wisdom at work. The Stoics understood something that most people today have forgotten. In a world full of noise, silence becomes power. When everyone is screaming to be heard, the person who chooses when and how to speak commands the conversation. Today, we're going to explore 7 revolutionary Stoic principles that will transform your understanding of silence from a weakness into your greatest strength. Chapter 1, the Stoic foundation of silence. Let's start with the foundation. When Epictetus was asked by his students how to gain respect and influence, he didn't tell them to speak more eloquently or argue more forcefully. He said something that shocked them. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But this wasn't just about listening. The Stoics discovered 3 fundamental truths about silence that modern neuroscience has now validated. Truth 1, silence creates psychological tension. Think about the last time someone gave you the silent treatment. How did it make you feel? Uncomfortable, right? Anxious? Maybe even desperate to fill that void? This happens because our brains are wired to seek patterns and closure. When someone breaks the expected pattern of back-and-forth conversation, it creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. The other person's mind starts racing. Why aren't they responding? What are they thinking? Are they angry with me? Do they know something I don't? Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." He understood that by controlling his responses, or lack thereof, he could influence others' thoughts and emotions. Truth 2, silence forces others to reveal themselves. Have you ever noticed that when you stay quiet during a conversation, others tend to keep talking? They fill the void with more information, often revealing things they never intended to share. This is what interrogators and skilled negotiators have known for centuries. Seneca observed this in the Roman Senate. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. When you end, you're part of the conversation. You create space for others to begin revealing their true intentions. Story time. The silent emperor Marcus. Aurelius once sat through an entire Senate meeting without speaking a word. The senators, initially confident in their positions, became increasingly agitated. They started contradicting themselves, revealing hidden agendas, and making desperate appeals for his attention. By the end, without saying a word, Marcus had learned everything he needed to know about each senator's true loyalties. Truth 3, silence commands attention to your words. When someone speaks rarely, people listen intently when they finally do speak. This is the scarcity principle in action. Your words become valuable because they're rare. Compare this to someone who never stops talking. After a while, people tune them out. Their words become background noise, regardless of how important the content might be. Epictetus taught, "It's better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." A physical stumble is quickly forgotten, but words spoken carelessly can haunt you forever. Now let's dive into the psychology behind why your silence makes others so uncomfortable. This isn't manipulation, it's understanding human nature and responding accordingly. The mirror effect. When you remain silent, you become a mirror. People see their own insecurities reflected back at them. The confident, aggressive person who's used to dominating conversation suddenly faces something they can't control: your inner calm. Dr. Albert Mehrabian's famous communication study revealed that only 7% of communication is verbal. The other 93% is body language and tone. When you're silent, people are forced to read your nonverbal cues more intensely. And if you're projecting calm confidence, it becomes intimidating. Case study: the silent assassin in corporate America. I know a CEO who built her reputation on strategic silence. In board meetings, when others were frantically pitching ideas and arguing over strategies, she would sit back, arms crossed, just listening. Her silence created several powerful effects. 1. The spotlight effect. Everyone became acutely aware of her presence. 2. The vacuum effect. Others felt compelled to fill the silence, often revealing more than they intended. 3. The authority effect. When she finally spoke, everyone stopped to listen. She told me, "I learned that in a room full of people trying to prove how smart they are, the smartest move is to let them. They'll tell you exactly what you need to know." The neuroscience of silence. Recent neuroscientific research has shown that silence activates the default mode network in our brains, the same network associated with introspection and self-awareness. When you're comfortable with silence, you signal high emotional intelligence and self-control. Meanwhile, those who can't handle silence often suffer from what researchers call silence anxiety, a fear of introspection that drives them to constant verbal output. The power dynamics of conversation. Think about every conversation as a game of chess. Most people are playing checkers, making obvious moves, trying to capture pieces quickly. But the Stoic approach is chess mastery. Opening, let them make the first moves, observe their strategy. Middle game, respond strategically, not reactively. End game. When you finally act, it's decisive and game-changing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. By staying present and silent, you gain the tactical advantage of observing the entire battlefield while others are focused on their next move." Chapter 3. The Art of Strategic Non-Response. Not all silence is created equal. There's a massive difference between being quiet because you have nothing to say and choosing silence as a strategic response. Let me teach you the Stoic art of strategic non-response. The 3 types of powerful silence. 1. Observational silence. This is when you choose to listen and learn rather than contribute immediately. Epictetus taught his students, "God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason." Example scenario. You're in a meeting where colleagues are discussing a project you know is doomed to fail. Instead of immediately voicing your concerns, you remain silent, taking notes on who supports what and why. This information becomes invaluable later when the project inevitably encounters problems. 2. Evaluative silence. This occurs when someone says something that requires careful consideration rather than an immediate response. The Stoics believed that wisdom comes from reflection, not reaction. Think of it as the pause before the storm. When someone makes an accusation, presents a challenging idea, or tries to provoke you, instead of reacting instantly, you pause. This pause signals that their words have weight and deserve consideration, which is often more unsettling to them than an immediate defensive response. 3. Dismissive silence. Sometimes, the most powerful response to nonsense is no response at all. Marcus Aurelius faced plenty of critics and political enemies, but he understood that engaging with every criticism would diminish his authority. How much trouble he avoids, who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. The 48-hour rule. Here's a practical Stoic technique. I call the 48-hour rule. When someone says something that triggers an emotional response in you, commit to waiting 48 hours before responding. This isn't procrastination, it's strategic patience. During those 48 hours, your initial emotional reaction subsides. You can evaluate the situation objectively. You often realize that many provocations don't deserve responses. If you do respond, your words carry more weight because they're measured. Story: the silent treatment that changed everything. A successful entrepreneur once told me about a partnership dispute that nearly destroyed his company. His business partner was publicly criticizing him, spreading rumors and trying to turn their team against him. Everyone expected him to fight back publicly, to defend himself, to engage in the drama. Instead, he remained completely silent. For weeks, he said nothing. No public responses, no private confrontations, no attempts to defend himself. His silence became deafening. Meanwhile, his partner's accusations became increasingly desperate and unhinged. Without anyone to argue with, he began to look paranoid and unstable. The team, initially swayed by the drama, began to see the stark contrast between the calm, professional silence of one partner and the frantic accusations of the other. Within 2 months, the accusatory partner had isolated himself so thoroughly that he voluntarily sold his shares and left the company. The entrepreneur never said a word against him publicly. The Aikido principle. In martial arts, Aikido teaches that the best way to defeat an aggressive opponent is to use their energy against them. Stoic silence works the same way. When someone is aggressive, argumentative, or trying to provoke you, their energy has nowhere to go. It bounces back to them. They become increasingly frustrated. They often defeat themselves. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes, staying silent is how you help someone end their own destructive behavior. Chapter 4, Reading the Room, When Silence Speaks Volumes. Now let's talk about the art of reading situations and understanding, when your silence will have maximum impact. This is where Stoicism becomes practical psychology, the silence spectrum. Not every situation calls for the same type of silence. The Stoics were masters of reading social dynamics and responding, or not, responding appropriately. Scenario 1, the aggressive challenger. Picture this. You're in a meeting, and someone directly challenges your idea or competence in front of others. Their tone is aggressive, their body language confrontational. Everyone's looking at you, expecting a defensive response. The instinctive response is to fight back immediately. But the Stoic response? A calm pause, direct eye contact, and then one of two choices. Option A, acknowledge their concern with measured words. "I appreciate your perspective. Let me think about that." Option B, complete silence while you write something down, as if their comment was worth documenting. Both responses completely deflate their aggression, because you've refused to engage at their emotional level. Scenario 2, the attention seeker. We all know this person. They dominate every conversation, tell endless stories about themselves, and seem to need constant validation. Most people either compete with them for attention or tune them out entirely. The Stoic approach: give them your complete attentive silence. Let them talk until they exhaust themselves. Often they'll eventually ask for your opinion, at which point your words carry enormous weight, because you've been the thoughtful observer in a room full of performers. Scenario 3, the group dynamic. You're in a group where everyone is agreeing with an idea you know is flawed. The social pressure to go along is intense. Speaking up could make you look like the negative one, the troublemaker. Here's where strategic silence becomes powerful. Instead of arguing against the popular opinion, you remain thoughtfully quiet. When asked directly for your opinion, you can say, "I've been listening to everyone's thoughts, and I think this deserves more consideration before we commit." This approach shows you've been paying attention, suggests depth and careful thinking, doesn't directly attack anyone's ideas, creates space for others to voice their own doubts. The power of the pregnant pause. Master the art of the pregnant pause, that moment of silence that makes everyone lean in. When someone asks you a question, especially a challenging one, Count to 3 before responding. This simple pause shows you're taking their question seriously, builds anticipation for your response, gives you time to formulate the best answer, makes your eventual words more impactful. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly in the Roman Senate. Senators would present him with complex problems expecting immediate decisions. His moments of contemplative silence became legendary, and his eventual judgments were rarely questioned because everyone could see the careful thought behind them. Body language during strategic silence. Your silence is only as powerful as your body language supports it. Here's what the Stoics understood about nonverbal communication. Confident silence looks like relaxed but upright posture, direct but not aggressive eye contact, calm facial expression, hands either folded or taking notes. Breathing is slow and controlled. Weak silence looks like slouched or defensive posture, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting or nervous movements, facial expressions that show anxiety, rapid or shallow breathing. The difference between these two types of silence is the difference between appearing thoughtfully powerful and appearing intimidated or incompetent. Chapter 5. The Confidence Killer. How Silence Exposes Insecurity. Here's where we dive into the psychological warfare aspect of Stoic silence. I want to be clear. This isn't about being cruel or manipulative. It's about understanding human nature and protecting yourself from those who would use verbal aggression to dominate you. The insecurity paradox. The people most threatened by your silence are usually the ones with the most to hide. Confident, secure people are comfortable with quiet moments in conversation. They don't feel the need to fill every second with words. But insecure people, your silence becomes their nightmare. It forces them to confront the one thing they're desperately trying to avoid: their own thoughts. Case study: the corporate bully. I once worked with a manager who was known for being verbally aggressive in meetings. He would interrupt people, dismiss ideas loudly, and generally dominate every conversation through sheer volume and intensity. One day, a new team member joined our group, a quiet, thoughtful woman who had recently completed her MBA. In her first meeting with this manager, something interesting happened. He launched into his typical aggressive questioning of a project proposal. Instead of getting defensive or arguing back like most people did, she simply listened. She took notes. She maintained eye contact. She nodded occasionally to show she was following his points. But she didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched. He repeated his question more aggressively. Still, she sat quietly, appearing to consider his points carefully. Finally, she spoke. "Those are important concerns. Let me address each one." Then she systematically, calmly responded to every point he'd raised, demonstrating that she'd been listening carefully and had thoughtful answers. Something shifted in that room. His usual intimidation tactics had failed completely. Her silence had transformed his aggression into something that looked more like desperation. Within 6 months, she had been promoted above him. The projection effect. When you remain silent in the face of aggression, something fascinating happens psychologically. The aggressive person begins to project their own fears and insecurities onto your silence. They might think, "They must know something I don't know. They're judging me. They see through my act. They're more confident than I am." Often, all of these projections are correct, but they've reached these conclusions entirely on their own, through your strategic non-response. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Your silent confidence becomes a mirror that reflects their insecurity back at them. The escalation trap. Insecure people often try to force you into their emotional state through escalation. They'll raise their voice, use more aggressive language, make personal attacks, try to provoke an emotional response. Each escalation is actually a sign of their increasing desperation. Your continued calm silence makes their behavior look increasingly unhinged to observers. This is what I call the escalation trap. The more they escalate, the worse they look in comparison to your composed silence. Eventually, they either exhaust themselves or cross a line that damages their own credibility. The authority transfer. Here's something remarkable that happens when you master Stoic silence. Authority naturally transfers to you, even if you hold no formal power in the situation. Think about it, in any group dynamic, who do people eventually turn to for the real opinion? It's usually the person who has been quietly observing, not the one who's been loudly dominating. This happens because silence signals several high-status traits: self-control, confidence, thoughtfulness, emotional intelligence, hidden knowledge or wisdom. Story, the silent board member. A friend of mine serves on the board of directors for a mid-sized company. He told me about another board member, a woman in her 60s who rarely speaks during meetings. When she does speak, however, the entire room goes quiet. Her words carry enormous weight, not because of her formal authority. She holds the same voting power as other board members, but because of her strategic use of silence. During one particularly heated debate about company strategy, various board members argued back and forth for over an hour. She said nothing, just took notes and listened. Finally, the chairman turned to her. "Sarah, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts?" Her response was measured, thoughtful, and incorporated insights from everything that had been discussed. But more than that, her analysis revealed assumptions and blind spots that all the arguing board members had missed. Her silence had allowed her to see the forest, while everyone else was focused on individual trees. The company implemented her strategy. It was wildly successful. Chapter 6. Practical Applications. Silence in Everyday Situations. Let's get practical. How do you actually implement these Stoic principles in your daily life? I'm going to give you specific scenarios and exact strategies. Workplace dynamics. The micromanaging boss. Your boss constantly checks in on your work, questions your methods, and seems to doubt your competence. Your instinct might be to over-explain, justify every decision, or become defensive. Stoic strategy, strategic information, silence. Give concise factual updates when asked, but don't volunteer extra information. Let your work speak for itself. Example dialogue. Boss, how's the Johnson project coming along? You, on schedule. Deliverables will be ready by Friday as planned. Boss, are you sure you're handling the client communications correctly? You, yes. The brevity of your responses will either A, give them confidence in your competence, or B, reveal their own micromanagement insecurities. Either way, you maintain professional dignity. The credit stealer. A colleague consistently takes credit for your ideas in meetings. Most people respond by becoming more aggressive about claiming credit or by calling out the behavior publicly. Stoic strategy. Document everything, but remain publicly silent about the credit stealing. Let the pattern reveal itself to others. When your idea is presented by someone else, simply maintain eye contact with them and nod slightly, as if acknowledging their presentation of your concept. Don't say anything, but your body language makes it clear to observant people what's happening. Often, the credit stealer will become uncomfortable with your silent acknowledgement and either start giving you credit or stop stealing your ideas. Relationship applications. The argumentative partner. Your romantic partner has a pattern of picking fights over minor issues. Traditional advice might tell you to communicate more or express your feelings. Stoic approach. Refuse to engage at their emotional level. When they start an argument over something trivial, listen calmly. Then respond with something like, "I can see you're upset. Let's talk about this when we're both calm." Then genuinely disengage. Don't argue, don't defend, don't explain. This breaks the cycle of escalation and often reveals whether they're arguing about the real issue or just seeking emotional drama. The gossiping friend. Someone in your social circle constantly shares gossip and seems to be fishing for your opinions about mutual friends. Stoic response. Become a gossip dead end. Listen politely but contribute nothing to the conversation. Don't ask follow-up questions. Don't share your own gossip. And don't express strong opinions about the people being discussed. Response examples, them. Did you hear what happened with Sarah and her boyfriend? You. No. Them. Well, apparently they broke up because you. Eventually, gossips stop coming to you because you're not feeding their need for dramatic conversation. Social situations. The one-upper. Every social group has someone who always has a better story, a more extreme experience, or more impressive achievements than whatever anyone else shares. Instead of competing with them or calling out their behavior, try this. When they finish their one-up story, just nod and say, "Interesting." Then turn to someone else and continue the original conversation. Your refusal to be impressed or to compete takes the wind out of their sails without creating confrontation. The political debater. Someone tries to drag you into a political argument at a social gathering. They make provocative statements designed to get a reaction. Stoic strategy. I find political discussions more productive in smaller, private settings. Then change the subject or excuse yourself from the conversation. This response doesn't reveal your political views, doesn't engage with their provocation, doesn't insult their intelligence, gives you a graceful exit. The boundary tester. Some people test boundaries by asking personal questions, making inappropriate comments, or pushing into topics you'd rather not discuss. Simple Stoic responses. That's personal. I'd rather not discuss that. Interesting question. The key is to deliver these responses calmly and without over-explanation. Don't justify why you won't answer, just don't answer. Advanced technique, the strategic reveal. Once you've mastered basic strategic silence, you can use what I call the strategic reveal carefully. Chosen moments when you do share information or opinions, making them exponentially more impactful because of your usual restraint. When the quiet person finally speaks, everyone listens. Chapter 7. The transformation from reactive to responsive. Let's talk about the ultimate goal of Stoic silence. Transforming yourself from someone who reacts to every provocation into someone who responds thoughtfully and strategically. The reactive trap. Most people live in reactive mode. Someone says something, they immediately respond. Someone challenges them, they immediately defend. Someone tries to provoke them, they take the bait. This reactive pattern puts you at a constant disadvantage because you're always responding to others' agendas. Your responses are emotional rather than strategic. You reveal your weaknesses and triggers. You waste energy on things that don't matter. The responsive transformation. When you master Stoic silence, you become responsive rather than reactive. The difference is profound. Reactive, immediate emotional response. Responsive, thoughtful. Strategic response. Reactive, defensive when challenged. Responsive, curious about the challenge. Reactive, takes everything personally. Responsive, evaluates objectively. Reactive, seeks to win every argument. Responsive, chooses which battles matter. The 30-day challenge. I want you to try this 30-day transformation challenge. Week 1, the observation. Week, simply observe your current patterns. Notice how often you respond immediately to text messages, provocative comments, challenges to your opinions, requests for immediate decisions. Don't change anything yet. Just observe and take notes. Week 2, the pause. Week before responding to anything non-urgent. Implement a pause. Count to 5 for minor conversations. Count to 30 for emotional topics. Wait 2 hours for text messages. Sleep on any major decisions. Week 3, the strategic week start, asking yourself before responding. What am I trying to accomplish with this response? If you don't have a clear strategic goal, consider staying silent or giving a minimal response. Week 4, the integration week, combine observation, pausing and strategic thinking into a natural flow. By now you should notice your stress levels decreasing, your words carrying more weight when you do speak, others treating you with more respect, fewer unnecessary conflicts in your life. The confidence shift. Here's what happens psychologically when you make this transformation. Your confidence stops depending on external validation and starts coming from internal mastery. Before, you needed to win arguments to feel confident. After, you feel confident choosing not to argue. Before, you needed others to agree with you. After, you're comfortable with disagreement. Before, You feared being misunderstood. After, you trust that your actions will speak for themselves. This shift is what Marcus Aurelius called the discipline of desire, wanting only what is within your control and being indifferent to everything else. The ripple effect. When you transform from reactive to responsive, it doesn't just change you, it changes how others interact with you. People start asking for your opinion more often, respecting your time and boundaries, seeing you as someone with hidden depths, coming to you for advice rather than drama. You become what the Stoics called a preferred indifferent, someone others prefer to be around because your presence brings calm rather than chaos. We've covered a lot of ground today, from understanding why silence makes others uncomfortable, to mastering the art of strategic non-response, to transforming yourself from reactive to responsive. But here's the truth. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. The Stoics weren't philosophers who sat around thinking. They were practitioners who lived their principles. Your mission, should you choose to accept it. Starting today, I want you to implement just one thing from this video. Choose one situation in your life where you typically react immediately. Maybe it's responding to provocative social media comments, or defending yourself when criticized at work, or getting drawn into family drama. For the next week, practice strategic silence in that one situation. Don't try to change everything at once. Just pick one area and master it. Here's what will happen. Day 1-2, you'll feel uncomfortable not responding. That's normal. Day 3-4, you'll start noticing how others react to your silence. Day 5-7, you'll begin to see the power in your restraint. After 1 week, you'll understand viscerally what the Stoics knew intellectually. Silence isn't emptiness, it's potential. Remember Marcus Aurelius's words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your silence is proof of that power. If this video helped you understand the strategic power of silence, smash that like button and subscribe for more practical Stoic wisdom. Drop a comment below, sharing which situation you're going to practice strategic silence in. I read every comment and your commitment helps keep you accountable. And if you're ready to dive deeper into Stoic practices that will transform your life, check out the video appearing on your screen right now about how Marcus Aurelius handled criticism and conflict. Remember, in a world full of noise, your thoughtful silence isn't just heard, it's felt, respected and feared by those who mistake volume for strength. Until next time, stay strong, stay silent when it serves you, and stay stoic.